to engage with you this evening. Politics is about life. So even when we say we don't like politics, politics does define the environment in which we live in. It does define the socio-economic and political sphere that we operate in. Actually, politics is the common denominator that determines everything else. And therefore, even when you don't want to run, when you don't want to be a politician, in quotes, you still are engaged in politics in some way or other. And if you do not participate in making the critical decision of who should run the affairs of your ward, of your county, and of your country, the constituencies included, then you are ceding your right to be governed properly. So it is very important that we all involve ourselves. I got into politics as a young lawyer. I will say maybe out of choice, in the sense that I used to listen to my professional environment were being affected sometimes negatively, other times positively, by politics. And when we needed to fight for enlarged democratic space. And I think that our level of involvement depends on each one of us. It doesn't have to be the same, but let us all get involved in some way, if by not running, by supporting a political party or candidates of your choice. Because if we don't do so, then you are actually ceding your right to be governed properly. So I'm very, very delighted to see all of you this evening, because coming here means you have taken an active interest in how our great country is governed. And I keep on repeating this, and I will tonight, that all those Western countries, some of us and our children love to go to, whether for treatment, for holiday, for shopping, or looking for economic opportunities. In the last century, none of them was as developed as they were. There was famine in the West. There was plague. There were serious illnesses and mass deaths. But citizens like us got together, and the result is that those well-developed democracies and economies that we see. We are therefore called upon as Kenyans to actually get actively involved in the affairs of our country at whatever level. And that's why I once again say thank you to you for getting involved by coming here tonight, and for whatever other level of involvement each one of you has had. I want, before I forget, to thank my good friends, and indeed everybody who has spoken and said very kind words about me. However, I'm just an imperfect human being like all of us. And indeed, we are all imperfect, and all we are required to do is to strive to do our best when called upon. That's all that we have to do. We don't always do our best. Sometimes we do just a little bit, the little bit we can. Other times we go out of the way to do our best. But we keep on praying each day that we do our best for ourselves and for our country, because a country is not like a wardrobe which you can change. Even if any one of us shifts and goes to another country, you still long for your home, where your roots are, your relatives are, your friends are, and where your success can be measured by your peers. If you go out there and you buy a mansion, you might not have anyone to show off to or anyone to invite, because I've been in other countries and people work 16 hours a day. They buy mansions that they are not able to enjoy. They buy big cars. They have money, but they are not able to have leisure because they work very hard. Not that we don't work hard, but we are blessed with different circumstances. And even when we work hard, we still have family. Well, I mean, time for family and for friends. When I say family, it's blood relatives and the family you choose for yourself, which is your friends. So we must always remember we are actually very lucky to have this country to call home. Good weather, spirit of community, because most of us, our lives are weaved around our families and our friends. Something very unique which is getting lost in the developed world, and which I hope even when we develop, we continue to keep. So I want to say that also as Azimio running mate, I and my captain, I like to say in Swahili kinara wangu, but in English I'll say my captain, we actually do recognize that we are imperfect human beings. But our commitment to you and to Kenyans is that we will try to do our best, and we will bank on you to remind us when we veer off course, because human beings are given to err. It is up to all of us to watch over each other and to remind each other. And when we make our commitments to you, we mean it, and we will be expecting you to remind us. When one is reminded, we don't always smile, because we might view it as a disturbance. But it is your duty to remind us, whether we smile or not. And I want to assure you that when we are reminded, we may not tell you that we appreciate, but somewhere in the night, those words will come back. And we will weigh them when we make our next moves. So be encouraged, and when you do give us our votes, because indeed I must also take this opportunity to seek your support so that the Azimio team can get an opportunity, together with you and the rest of Kenyans, to build this nation to the sort of nation we would want to see, where nobody starves, where nobody suffers for lack of shelter, a nation that is built on the principles a family is built upon. When nations look out for the weak in society, they are doing what families do. When you have more and you have something to spare, you pull up your relatives, your siblings, you open opportunities to them, and you lift them up. That is what a nation is supposed to do. So when we talk of social welfare, it is because as Kenyans, we are one family, irrespective of our religion, irrespective of our social circumstance. So those who have more are called upon to give some to those who have nothing, so that in that spirit of family. And that is why in our constitution, we all agreed in Article 43 that there are certain basic needs, human needs, that each person ought to be able to access And therefore, the country must do these things for those who are unable to achieve them for themselves. And those things are shelter, they're food, they're the basics like water, education, all those things that you need for your life to progress. What attracted me to Azimio in the first place is that promise of accelerating the implementation of Article 43. However much each one of us has, I don't think it's a pleasing sight to find children scavenging from the bins in the streets or families sleeping in the streets. It is not a pleasing sight to see our brothers and sisters in informal settlements without basic services like water and sanitation. It is not a good thing to see people who cannot access education. And I therefore think that those are the reasons that pushed Kenyans to entrench in the Constitution the need for basic needs to be recognized in the Constitution. We have two agendas, because I don't want to go to our manifesto point by point. You can access it on the internet. We have two agendas. One, to seek your votes so that we can lay to rest the ghost of disputed elections. If we get an overwhelming vote, then that matter gets sorted out the way we had sorted it out in 2002 when we elected Mwai Kibaki overwhelmingly as a nation. We are at crossroads again, and we need to rescue ourselves from disputes of election which can bring us violence and instability. And if we overwhelmingly choose the path that offers the promise of progress over prosperous, shared prosperity, actually, let me use those words, and of shared progress across the nation, then we will have rescued ourselves from that. And then together as a nation, we can ask ourselves, long before the next cycle of elections comes, what do we need to do to ensure that our elections never fall below the standard of largely free and fair? Indeed, not just in word. The second agenda is to complete or to further the incomplete reform business. If you look at our constitution, there is no reason why we should be having such high level of corruption in this country when we have a beautiful document that has chapter 6 on the standards of leadership. Chapter 6 is all about leadership and integrity. And I'm saying these elections are actually just about leadership. We have the legal framework, we have the human resource, we have financial resource, but we have mismanaged ourselves because we do not have good leadership, uongozi bora. So this is all about good leadership. It's about trust, because we have a deficit of trust in this country. We don't trust each other. And indeed, we are not largely trustworthy, because the people who man our institutions, you can talk about the IEBC, you can talk about the courts, you can talk about EACC, talk about any institution. The institutions are made by me and you. So we are the ones who are not trustworthy. Leadership is made by me and you. When we elect leaders who are unworthy, we make ourselves not trustworthy. And as I conclude, I want to remind you of the last American election, because I'm saying in Kenya, and Americans may not like this very much, but I do think we are facing a Trump moment, where truth is on its head, and people actually knowingly associate and want the country to have the type of leadership that it shouldn't have. We don't have angels on earth, but we can try as much as we have to attain the best level of leadership that as a nation we can get. And when I talk of leadership, not just political, it's in our institutions as well. I remember the American elections because I remember reports of President Trump calling the Secretary of State in Georgia, a Republican state, and asking him to find him some 11,000 votes so that he could win. It sounded like somewhere here. And the Secretary of State telling him, if you remember, it was a taped conversation, telling him, Mr. President, I got a job to do. I am waiting for most of our professionals, because you never can get it 100%, to be able to say, for a police officer who is being offered a bribe, to say, I got a job to do. For a presiding officer who is being offered a bribe to mess the elections, or that counting clerk, to look at the person in the eye and tell them, I've got a job to do. It means you have a duty to your country. If all of us were true to our country, we would be free of problem. May I invite you to walk with us as Azimio? I know Sheikh Khalifa has told me that the door is now open. May I, on behalf of Azimio, say we are ready to engage with you, not just because of the vote, but even in governing. I believe you cannot govern a people you are not close to, you do not listen to, you do not reason with. And that, under our constitution, is called participation. If you govern people without participation, you will miss something, and you will not fulfill their wishes. I know my captain is serious. When he picked me, I said, he is serious. I knew him to be serious, but I now know him to be more serious than I ever thought. Because we have worked together. He knows my thoughts, he knows about leadership, and he knows in certain matters the positions that I take. And he not only dared to pick me, he also did voice that when we get there, and God help us to get there, that he will ask me to look after matters of the legal affairs and constitutional affairs, matters of justice and constitutional affairs. That is indication to me that he is very serious about the promises we are making in Azimio. And like you, I will be there to remind them, to remind him, and you will be there to remind me, because we all need to be watched over. So I want to urge you to boldly team up with us and let us build the country.